Welcome, and particularly welcome to Libu Mutshatshi and Khathu Nethavhani. Is that right, Khathu Nethavhani?
It is indeed correct, Sean. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just some by way of background, folk. So Libu is CEO of an organization called the Institute of Governance Professionals. She has a number of other responsibilities and has got a very rich background. I was just looking at her LinkedIn profile this morning. And but she's also editor-in-chief of a magazine called Governance Matters. And this is a group that's chaired by Khathu and a number of eminent professionals in the space of governance. And yeah, I was fortunate to be invited to the launch of this particular institute, and was just astounded by the level of professionalism and excellence that I saw there, and very nice to know that Libu as editor-in-chief and Khathu as the executive editor have put together a magazine which is available at no cost. And I just thought to invite them through and just ask them to tell us a little bit about the Institute of Governance Professionals and a little bit about the magazine as well. So who would like to kick off? Libu as the CEO and editor-in-chief.
Thank you, Sean. I would like to request Khathu to give you the background about the Institute itself, and then I'll come in when we have to talk about the magazine. Thank you.
Khathu. So tell us about the Institute. I mean, this is something you folk have put together. This is not funded by any massive organization. It's from the sounds of it, this is volunteers, it's people who have a massive interest in governance, and tell us about the Institute of Governance Professionals. You have another day job, and on top of that, you're putting this together.
Thank you very much, Sean. And I think also I need to thank your audience for the opportunity. Indeed, we established the Institute of Governance Professionals as a professional body in the main organizing governance professionals and people who may be interested in good governance. You are also correct in saying that we are not necessarily funded by anyone outside the participants themselves. We fortunately succeeded in putting together a team of very senior academics and professionals, because you look at our board, you will realize it is glaring that we have got some senior academics, professors, doctors, senior researchers, largely based at universities and so on. So our approach, essentially, Sean, is based on 4 pillars. The first pillar being that we intend, or we are organizing, because the process is already in motion. We are organizing governance professionals and directors. That's the first one. Secondly, we train, educate, and build capacity. And thirdly, we take governance to people, because I think the conversation and the discourse about governance before our intervention tends to be more elitist. It is something that is preserved of the educated and so on. So the idea is also to get everyone involved, because we believe that for us to deal with the challenges of governance that we are having, as a country in particular, but a continent in general, and also globally, we need to have almost everyone involved. But the other aspect, and we are very strong on it as well, is policy advocacy and research. We have put together a team led by senior researchers, and the mandate of that team is to conduct research on governance issues, but also to do policy advocacy in the sense that we intend to lobby the policymakers and the lawmakers in terms of adopting or towards adopting the progressive policies and so on. In our approach, Sean, we are based here in South Africa, but our emphasis is on Africa. So if you look at, for instance, our current structure, we do not only exist in South Africa. Equally, our board members are not necessarily only from South Africa. So we do have presence across Africa in many countries, and even our board members, for instance, are also from other parts of Africa. But we do have also a global outlook. Because if you look at the Zondo Commission, for instance, one thing that it has taught us is the global nature of governance. We saw, for instance, consulting companies, audit firms, and other professional firms coming from other jurisdictions to somehow being implicated in the state capture that we witnessed there in South Africa. So we needed on that basis to have a global outlook, to look at what is happening across the globe, and also find ways in our own humble kind of a way to make a contribution towards amelioration of governance challenges that the globe may be facing. Indeed, I must emphasize that our emphasis is here at home in Africa, and we are based in South Africa in terms of our head office and our offices and our daily operations. They are coordinated from South Africa. In the interest of time, Sean, I think I should leave it at that, and I trust I've covered sufficient ground.
Fantastic. That's great. I've got some questions for you, which we can come back to just now, around, if somebody's interested, how do they become a member? What's the process? What are the options, and when? But let's go to Lebo. Lebo, you've put this together, editor-in-chief, CEO also of the Institute. Just give us a little bit of background as to this particular magazine that you've put together.
Thank you so much, Sean. So also building up on what Khathu has already said, in looking at the governance issues and us as an institution, we just then thought, how are we going to then disseminate the information and let both the public and professionals know about what is happening in terms of, the governance matters that are happening around the country and in Africa as we move forward. And you may see, even in the name itself of the magazine, it's called Governance Matters, so that when you pick it up, you already know that these are issues that I'm interested in, and this is what I'd like. So there's no gray area. The name of the magazine is very clear, so that those who would like to pick it up know exactly what to look forward to. It is a fresh publication. It's dedicated to exploring governance, leadership, policy issues that are shaping Africa's future. The magazine is also essential, in fact, an essential resource for professionals like you as procurement specialists, because it brings to light key governance trends that directly impact your field. And Sean, at the core of every procurement decision, there are policies and governance structures that influence transparency. There are issues of accountability and also ethical sourcing, which I think in these meetings you probably discuss all the time. So Governance Matters as a magazine covers these issues extensively, helping to also navigate the complex frameworks you work within. For example, in this edition that we just published, that has Sean's recent story in the magazine, it focuses on how strong governance mechanisms in the no, in procurement, actually. I actually wrote the incorrect thing here. I focused on the other story, which was the African food systems. But also here, we talk about the efficiency of procurement processes, but also the sustainability and equity across all sectors. So we would like to invite procurement specialists to be part of this magazine, either as subscribers or even contributors, so that we can explore how innovative governance reforms can really transform the supply chains, making them more resilient and responsive to changing economic and environmental demands. So basically, this is the magazine that we have, and people will be able to gain insights on how things are evolving and what it means actually for procurement strategies that may be there across different industries. It's more than a magazine, because we would like to treat it as a guide to ensuring that principles of governance align with ethical and sustainable procurement practices, and to sort of ultimately contribute to better business and societal outcomes.
Thanks.
So with that, Sean, I'd like to say I look forward to discussing how we can engage with the magazine and also to contribute to these important conversations.
Thanks, Libra. And what struck me is, we're going as a public procurement community into a new transition with our Public Procurement Act. Many of the failures that we've seen in procurement, and I allude to some of those in the article that I put together, were actually governance failures. They were not necessarily procurement failures. In many of the institutions that I speak about, there are solid procurement policies and processes and systems and trained, equipped people, but governance broke down, and that has given a bad name sometimes to procurement. So we've got to find a way in the next year and a half to 2 years to be sure that we build strong governance practices and lessons into the work that we do in the procurement space. Thanks, Lebo. Khathu, any thoughts? I mean, if somebody is interested, so I have put the list, so the link in the chat to the magazine where people can subscribe and get a copy of this. I see there's a question. IODSA, Khathu, you might want to respond to that in the chat. How does this differ? Khathu, any thoughts on the question of membership and participating in this process?
Okay, no, thanks once more, Sean. I think the first one about the joining the institute, because we dealt with two parts. I dealt with the institute itself, and Livhuwani dealt more with the aspect of the magazine. The process of joining the IGP, a very simple process. It is outlined in detail on our website. I would encourage members to familiarize themselves with the process through visiting our website. Sean, we request that you share also the link to our website beyond the link to the magazine itself. And yes, we do have various categories depending on the educational background of the prospective member, and we take it from there. That's one. But secondly, The magazine, I understand, Sean, you have already shared the link of our magazine. I suppose they can also access it from that. Now, the question of how different are we from others? Look, it's a difficult one. I can only share what we are about and leave it at that. We are guided by 4 pillars that I've just outlined, and that is us. And I believe that on that basis, we should be unique without necessarily drawing direct parallels with any other organizations.
Thanks, Khathu. And that's a professional response. Thank you. I wonder if I'm not finding the actual website address. I've got your address. I've got your LinkedIn address, but I'm not finding the actual website. So if you're able to put that into the chat, you're welcome to do that. Let me.
I've just put it on the chat.
Thank you very much, Libu. Thank you. And any other questions from anyone who's online? Well, welcome sincerely. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to say perhaps just a quick one, Sean, while we are waiting for questions. I think we can just encourage the experts in various fields. In this particular instance, I think it will be procurement experts. That we are not only inviting them to be the consumers of the information that we put out there. We really encourage people to also submit articles, and we'll consider same and see if really we can publish them. But I think I think people would have views, would have perspectives and so on. I think we encourage people to also submit their articles, and then we take it from there as well.
Good one. If anyone's looking for some topics, Michael, I see your hand. We'll come to you now. Anyone's looking for some topics. I mean, the one big question is in terms of delegations of authority. To what extent do we delegate procurement decisions to the board? Or is that something which we keep at an operational level? That's one question. The other question is going to be around the bid committees in organizations. What are the governance processes and practice we put around that? So there's lots that we need to be covering in this space. Hi, Michael, go ahead.
Sorry, I just have a simple question. What do you refer to, or what do you define as a procurement professional? I'm a consulting engineer, and there are quite a few like me in South Africa who prepare bid documentation, and not only technical specifications, simply because the majority of the employers or clients in South Africa don't have the capacity to integrate technical specifications in procurement documentation. So normally, that task is devolved to us, and we're not really, we're engineers, so we like simple things, and sometimes some of the procurement vagaries are not as clear cut to us as the formula that we use to work out our designs.
Very, very good question. Very good question, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question, Michael. I think my take is that there may be a narrow and liberal definition of a procurement professional. A narrow one may refer to people who would have studied procurement and perhaps even affiliate to the relevant professional bodies as procurement professionals. But liberally, we refer to anyone who may be involved in procurement. And in the context of our conversation, we are employing the liberal definition of a procurement professional when we say anyone in procurement profession can do that. We are liberal, we mean everyone, including your good selves. you can then be able to submit an article which we may consider. And you may even be an intended consumer of our magazine as well.
Good one. It's but isn't that also a governance question, right? Is who do we consider people involved in this, and how do we box them and pigeonhole them, and those important questions. And there is no professional body, Khathu, at the moment for us, particularly for public procurement professionals. So that's certainly one thing that's being looked at as well. But I agree with you. Any stakeholders, any participants in the procurement process are going to be.
I do know that the Zondo Commission, for instance, made a specific recommendation to have the public procurements professionalized. So I would have thought that at least there's been some movement in that regard.
Criticism well received.
Sorry.
Michael?
Sorry, Sean. If I may make a point, when SIPDM first came out in South Africa a few years back, before it was torpedoed by a number of people and institutions, it required professionals who were involved with the procurement and delivery of infrastructure to actually write an examination and pass the examination. So some of us were amongst, I think the pass rate was something like 8%, which was not encouraging, particularly when a lot of the people sitting were actually people in government. So isn't that something that National Treasury should be revisiting, accrediting professionals and saying, well, you know, you want to be involved in this specific procurement. And we're not talking about other procurements. I'm talking specifically about infrastructure and whatever falls within the ambit of infrastructure. If you want to do this work, then you need to actually know the basics, or 80% of the basics, because I think that was the pass mark, if I remember correctly. And when I sat the exam, there were people in front of me from the state who were sitting the same exam for the 5th time.
So let's thanks, Michael. I think we will have another discussion on this matter, and just to mention that it is referenced in the Public Procurement Act. So this, if you like, the anchor for the professional body is there in the Public Procurement Act, and there is a lot of work that's being done behind the scenes to start to get this together. So it will come, and your points are valid, both Khathu and Michael. There's a question, if we could just quickly come to the question that Advocate Saluba has included, which is around is the institute accredited given that articles impact the academic career development? Khathu, any thoughts on that one? Is the institute accredited?
Okay, the arrangement is that we have been engaging, for instance, SAQA, and SAQA has said to us, we need to operate under the current circumstances. Until then, we can have registration after 3 years. But look, we are engaging them. They are aware of what we are doing, and we continuously interact with them. But for the institute then to be accredited in the traditional sense of the word, SAQA requires you to complete at least 3 years of existence. Below that, they cannot then accredit you in the traditional sense. But we operate under we do have the relationship with them. We do engage them from time to time.
Very good, thank you. So you are new, you've started off, and
we started off, I think, to put up infrastructure beginning of this year. And right after that, we had a meeting with SAQA to get to understand how we should operate for the 3 years that will be operating before being certified or rather registered, essentially.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how things are going now.
Very good, very good. Thank you. Thanks very much for coming online. Thanks for introducing the Institute. Thanks for introducing the magazine. We did put the link to the magazine in the chat for those that have joined recently. If we need to do that again, we can. I'm not going to pick up right now on the point that who was it that just raised around such. We don't want to get into that at the moment. Let's just park it at that point. Thank you, Libu. Thank you, Khathu, for coming online. Thank you for introducing this, and all the best to you at growing and improving governance in our country.
Thanks for the opportunity.
And thank you so much, Sean.
Thank you. Walter, you want to ask your question? I'm just going to thank our guests, and we're going to bring on the next topic yet. But to ask your question so long, Walter.
Yes, thanks, Sean, and good morning, colleagues. Just want to get some sense from the colleagues. As per the policy on the registration of non-statutory professional bodies, it may then make distinction between a professional body and a tuition provider, and it discourages an institution from being a referee and a player at the same time. So just want to get a sense to say which training providers are you intending to work with regard to your continuous professional development, because you can't be a referee and a player at the same time. Are you currently developing some relationships with any training providers to be able to provide kind of trainings that you intend to provide to your professionals? Thank you.
I think that's a very good one, Walter. In our, just to reinforce the point before I could respond to your question. Indeed, in our engagement with SAQA, they made it clear that you can't be both a training service provider and a professional body at the same time. And indeed, we are taking the stream of a professional body. So we are engaging and we are open to take proposals in terms of the training service provision. If really there's something that you need to put on the table for us to consider, we can look at that. But remember, and you will know that that is beyond the entry requirements criteria that ourselves can administer. You can come in terms of say the CPD, for instance, and so on. I think we are open to have a conversation in that regard, and we have been having conversations in that regard.